everyone, welcome back to Art a la Carte, and in today's episode I'm going to be showing you some hints and helps on drawing and coloring a rose. So let's get started.
Pencil and some paper, and the best part is having lots of fun with Art a la Carte.
I do have an easier how to draw a rose tutorial in my video archives, so if this maybe is a little bit too challenging or you want something a little bit more simple, I will leave a link to that in the description box below. But if you're ready for something a little bit more challenging, I invite you to join me in this drawing. So I'm going to be drawing this on some Copic paper because that's what I'm going to use to color it with later, but you could use whatever you want to color with. Just kind of think about what you want to ultimately do with your rose. That will determine what kind of paper you're going to use. Normally I would draw with a really light colored pencil, but I want you to be able to see, so I'm going to actually use a mechanical pencil so you can see a little bit better. So the first thing we're going to be drawing a rose in full bloom, but I want us to think back to when this rose was a baby bud, and we're going to draw the shape of the bud first. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the rose kind of coming off this way, and you'll have seen the rose in the thumbnail of this video. I'm going to draw a half circle or foreshortened circle up here, and this is going to be the kind of the top or opening of the bud, and then right down here I'm going to kind of draw this U shape underneath here, and I don't want it too big because I want lots of room here for all the petals to kind of flow out, but I need to get this core bud shape. And again, I'm drawing really lightly. You're going to want to use extremely light pressure because you're going to be overlapping a whole bunch of your petals. You want to be able to erase these lines, but you need to kind of build in the space, at least initially first, until you kind of get used to drawing this. So this is what kind of the shape of what the rose was when it was a baby, when it was a little bud. And so we're going to start to overlap some of the initial petals. Initial petals. I'm going to start from the outside of the bud, which is kind of actually the middle of the rose. So I'm going to start down here, and I'm not going to go straight up. I'm going to have this kind of curved line kind of coming up and wrapping around. So it's this nice S curve like this. And I want a little bit of this rose to kind of fold out, like the petal to fold out a little bit. So you'll see I'm creating this little bit of a fold line here. So this is the rose petal folding or coming up along so this petal is coming up along the rose, but then it's kind of folding back under the weight of it, the petal itself. And this, the only way I can tell you how to really do these is just look at photographs, draw from life, because every single petal is going to look a little different. But once you get it, boom. It makes it so much easier after you practice a little bit. So I did this petal here. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Wrap this one up, and each petal is individual and unique. So don't think you have to make mine look exactly like this. And if you're drawing from a reference photo and it looks a little bit different, just breathe. It's okay. I don't think I could ever draw two roses that look exactly the same. But I want to follow this kind of same sequence, just wrapping these two petals up and around. And you'll see that I'm bringing the edge of these petals out a little bit from the initial kind of bulb of the rosebud. That's okay, because as the rose opens up, the petals kind of fall back a little bit. They're not as tight. Now I'm going to create a petal that's in between on the inside of these two. So I'm just going to create kind of this little dome, and I don't want it to come up over too far because I want to be able to see what's kind of going on here. So I'm going to just create this little petal line right in here, because if you created this up too far over, then you're going to just hide everything that's in here and you won't be able to see all the cute little petals in here. So I have 1, 2, 3 petals. Now I'm going to create some that are wrapping around the back side. So you're just going to see a little bit of the top here kind of coming up around. Just like that, and maybe another one over on this side. Maybe a little bit of it coming over here and then wrapping around. Just like that. And then I'm going to put in some petals for just the very center of the rose. Now I find it's easier to work from the outside of the rosebud in and then fill in the outside petals. But you know, I know some artists start in the very middle and just kind of put all the petals out. Whatever way works for you. I'm just showing you how I do it, and I thought I would give you a little tips on how I do it as I drawing this, as I'm drawing this. I can't draw and talk at the same time. You get one or the other with me. I'm practicing my roses because I have a couple pieces that I want to put some roses in, and I need to practice them up a little bit. So I thought, hey, while I'm practicing, I would have you guys join me, and then we could draw roses together. Oh, that'd be fun. So I'm going to use my eraser. I'm just using my click eraser just because it has a little bit of a, I don't know, kind of a little finer point to it. I also like to use my gummy eraser. Unfortunately, I have used my gummy eraser so much that it's really dirty and I have to go get a new one. So until I get a new one, I have to use just a regular eraser. But if you have a gummy eraser, you can get really fine points with that. So I'm kind of cleaning up the lines that I don't need that are overlapped with. And again, that's the reason why we draw really, really lightly, so that we can erase and clean up these lines. All right, now that we've got kind of the bud, so if you were just drawing a rosebud, this would be how it would look, and you would just skip this next stage and go straight to the stem. But I want to make this a more opened flower, so I'm going to continue the same theory I had with these, but now I'm going to wrap these out much looser. So I'm going to start with this one here. I'm going to come up, and because these petals are now getting a lot more weight to them, you'll see that they will definitely kind of fold over on each other. So if you get this kind of folded effect, so you kind of draw the line and then just kind of have it folding over on itself. I'm going to wrap that up like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to have this one kind of come out over here a little bit. And I find that I make these edges of the petals not so straight or curved. I put a little bit of kind of definition, like, you know, little indentations and things like that. It kind of gives it, I don't know, to me, a little bit more realistic look to it. And then I definitely want this one to kind of come down much looser on the side here. Same with this one over here. You don't want this line to be this line here because this petal is a lot looser, it's falling out. That's how when you're choosing a rose to buy, if you want a fresher rose or a newer rose, you squeeze this part here, and if it's really soft, you know that a lot of the petals have loosened up already. But if it's nice and hard, you know that the petals are still really tight. It has still kind of a bud. Oops, sorry, I bumped you there. It's still kind of in its bud stage, and you know it's fresher, it'll last longer. I learned that from my sister who was a florist for a little while. I'm going to put this back rose petal here, and again, just creating some nice difference in the rose petal as it bends and folds. I love looking at pictures of flowers, or in the summertime and springtime, go out and look at the rose gardens that we have around here. Take photos for when it's not rose season, so I can go back and look at these. Or take little sketches of them, and then I can kind of go back and look at some of them. But don't be afraid to overlap your petals, because overlapping is what's really going to add a lot of volume to this. So I'm going to put one more little petal kind of coming out over here and wrapping right around in there. There we go. Alright, so there we have our initial SketchUp of the rose, which is really sketchy looking. You see the lines are kind of jaggedy because I'm just kind of getting that in there. If I wanted to make this inked in drawing, then I would draw these lines in very smoothly and get a nice crisp look. I'm actually going to lighten this line work up a lot before I add in my Copic marker colors. But the next step you want to do is to step 3, which if you're drawing just a rosebud, you would have skipped this part here and gone to the stem part, which the stem, people think, oh, it's just this little part that comes down. There's a little bit more to it. So first you have to find the center of the rosebud itself so that you have your stem placed in the center. And you also need the stem to be thick enough to hold up the rose itself, but not so thick that it looks like a tree branch. So you kind of have to study the thickness of roses. And then there's these little leaves that when the rosebud was really little, the leaves kind of curled up around it. And so as the rose gets older, these leaves fall back further, which is yet another thing to look for in finding the freshest rose, is how far these little green leaves are. If they are still like kind of coming up and over the bottom of these the petals, then you know that it's a pretty new rose. But if they are curled back and hanging down here, it's an old rose. So there, see? You learn drawing and flower picking skills. And you don't need a lot of those, just a few, just to kind of give it a little green. And then if you want to add thorns to your rose, you can do that. Or if you want to add like any little stems coming out or a little extra little leaves coming out, you can do that. I'm going to leave this just like this for right now. But this is then where you could decide to color it. So I'm actually going to take and clean up my drawing a little bit. So you'll see I'm going to erase a lot of this. And it might look to you that it's almost completely gone, like you can hardly see it. To me, I can see it as a ghosting. I want to know kind of where everything is, but when I put my color in, I don't want to see the lines. All right, so there we go. There's my beautiful rose, as you guys can see. It's pretty gone. But this is where I get to begin to use my markers. And again, you could use colored pencils or, crayons or, whatever you want for your colored pencils. Paints. I'm sorry, I'm setting up my stuff. That's why there's a little bit of a noise. I'm trying to find my color chart. I've placed it somewhere. Oh, alas, the trials of a messy art desk.